Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Mezbaur, as you already heard. Um, just to apologize from before, I'm not regularly much of a public speaker type of person. So if anytime I can see that I'm a little bit mumbling, so excuse me for that. Okay, so I work for a high-end fashion company, a fashion retail company here in the UK, London, as a senior platform engineer, but its overall role entails like being a DevOps engineer for the organization. Just to begin with, to say that how I became what I am today. So just to begin with my journey, I did my studies in computer network engineering back in 2005, and then went on to become sysadmin, and then to become a Linux system administrator at that time for a while. So those days I worked very much with like a servers, computers, and then went on to get more specialized in Linux side, or Red Hat Linux side of system administration. So that went on for a while, for next couple of years, and time to time had to work with on a DBA side of being a part-time SQL DBA. That just went on for the next few years until back in 2010-11, when cloud, especially with the AWS, started to make the buzz. Then I started to look into cloud computing, to be honest. And that was the time I was working for a big financial organizations as a Linux sysadmin, and I was trying to advocate the case for cloud computing. And that time I do remember cloud computing was the case for very, very new, and still at that time was a little bit frowned upon because cloud was not seen as very reliable, not very secure. And financial organizations, banks were absolutely not going to go onto cloud. Even many places, they say there is nothing more than a co-locations. And that time I started advocating for that within my organization. It did not happen. Then I moved on to a different organization where I could start working on cloud computing. And as I started working on cloud computing, that time I started to realize that, okay, I can, uh, rather than creating my machines by some bash script or following some step of imperative um, steps, I can do a declarative way. I can build my machines. So machines are no longer physical entity. It's more of like a service, or like a software feature which you call an API, give your code, and cloud does the best, cloud does the rest. And that is the time I started enjoying. So that means I started to see different arena into my work skills. That means because you have done coding back at university, but when you do into sysadmin, that time is coding is not something you do regularly every day, because it doesn't always that chance happen. But now your infrastructure coding, with you probably doing configuration management. At that time, I started with the Ansible for building servers, configuring applications, sometimes even pushing code there. That time I started moving into more from a hardcore sysadmin, more slightly towards into kind of like a application software development, which is a software. That software, I would say, is not the software that customer will use, is the software used for building infrastructure. Interesting. And that is the time from 2000, I think from my remember 14 time, I started hearing the buzz about DevOps. Then I started looking into, okay, what is DevOps? And I could feel that is a part of DevOps I was doing. That means that I am developing my infrastructure. But then I thought, hang on, this is that DevOps or is it an infrastructure coder? So that time I realized, okay, that part I was doing is more of an infrastructure coding. Then I started going into more of some meetups, events, understanding what DevOps is. Then I understood what DevOps is actually. If I see the development in one side of the business or one side of the world, and developers in one side of the wall and operations on other side of the wall, I could always see the problems. It's like there is a step-by-step instruction you have follow in order to push the code from your application development side onto your infrastructure, and there is always some missing links. Or maybe you say that this app needs to not to go to the infrastructure, it has to follow certain steps, but that always gets lost in translation. And that is the time I said, okay, how to mitigate that? So in order to mitigate that, you need a person or a mindset of people who understand infrastructure well enough, but who also has got some experience of application development in the form of like a coding, and who can see, not even just say, no, I don't know what the code does, but I just go and look into the code and say how this code should behave when it comes to infrastructure. Then developers can talk to you freely, and they can exchange ideas, and then you can go and actually you take the code onto infrastructure, onto your cloud platform. So this is how my journey into cloud computing or DevOps had happened. Now I work as a senior platform engineer, but DevOps is kind of like a thing we always do regularly, so that we work with the development side. We take that how we create continuous integration and deployment pipelines, workflows, whether it is Jenkins, whether it is GitHub Actions, or any other tools you use. You need to know that how that application or microservice, or be it on serverless, how it should go to infrastructure side, how you should monitor it, how you should maintain it, what sort of certain criteria needs to be followed. And you, in a way, you want to make yourself redundant in a way that you create a workflow or like a procedure. So that means every step of the way, developer doesn't need to depend on you. They can use that platform. So you create that flow, you create the pipeline, and on to build the next next service that is needed for the platform. As of regularly, what do I do regularly? So creating pipelines, workflows for our application, or creating standards which other development team they can use. A lot of time gets spent on developing infrastructure. So a lot of time I use things like a Terraform, which is like an infrastructure coding tool that is on its own of a application, like a software development, which is like infrastructure development. But the tool that you use, which he follows the YAML format, but then you need to understand your infrastructure, what you are building, and you actually follow through a software development life cycle onto your infrastructure coding. And while doing so, I also started to relearn or learn quite a lot of a few principles of software development, like a testing framework, things that you should use. Recently, I started using TerraTest. It's like a framework for infrastructure, Terraform testing. So that is what we do. Very many of our applications are on like a microservices, which are deployed on Kubernetes. We use in AWS, we use EKS of Elastic Kubernetes Service. In that, we use Helm charts for our templating the application, templating the service, or deployment, how it should go to a Kubernetes service. And we also use a tool called Flux that actually monitors your application change, monitors the image, Docker image that you create, and deploys it automatically onto your platform. So things have become very, very fast and agile. So we are pretty much now hands off. We don't actually get involved much into the application deployment. In previous cases, we had to sit with the development team, work through development states and run one by one. But now it goes pretty seamless. I mean, I can see the software teams that are deploying their infrastructure application themselves without any kind of like a hand-holding for us, so which is very good. So that's sort of things I do regularly. Next topic in mind. So what are the challenges? The challenges is, as a platform engineer or as a DevOps engineer, there is a wide variety of things you need to be aware of. You need to know about your platform. Platform means there are so many things you need to know. You need to know how these things are monitored, how these things are running, what sort of load balancers, what sort of like a other microservices or serverless applications or other stuff that is running within your organization. It takes time. It takes time. Sometimes as a developer, you can focus on certain things, but as a platform engineer, there's a wide variety of things you need to be aware of. You need to plan right. You need to think about your risk. You need to think about your rollback strategy. You need to think about who the stakeholders are. You need to think about what values you're going to add. You need to think about what is the quickest outcome you can achieve. So it's just like I always think about the thing that I'm doing, what outcome benefit it will provide for the team or the company, not just for your own learning, but the whole company itself. And this is how you add value. And for that, it comes with experience. It comes with a lot of challenges. It comes with experience, and sometimes you learn these things as you go by. And the final topic I would say is just what is DevOps is a thing I also quite still it's always a changing, little bit of a changing topic. Different people at times thinks DevOps in differently. For me, DevOps is something what you do, not what you are. So basically, I'm a platform engineer. I do DevOps, means like I am working with the both application development and the platform or the infrastructure side. I am bringing the code on from development onto the infrastructure, and I'm doing a feedback loop. Like things it has gone there, what is the feedback loop goes onto the application development side. So if you think of that loop, that is what is I see for the time being DevOps is. But I think as you go, it is one of the role or on one of the title that will evolve in next few years. So I think, Kimberly, that is what I had to say. I'm happy to accept questions at this stage. Okay. Yeah, you're muted, Kimberly.
Oh, that's good. I've not said anything yet. I'm just typing. Please put any questions in the chat. 1, 2 have come through. So if you want to, you can start answering those.
Okay. Do you need to know a lot of languages to be DevOps? I think in order to learn languages, it depends on which background you have come from. If you have come from sysadmin background, you probably have done a lot of scripting in using Bash in your life, and then you probably want to sometimes have done some Ruby. You need to probably most of the infrastructure coding that does a lot of coding in Python. But one of the most popular tool is the Terraform. That is an infrastructure coding tool that people use. So you have to understand how the software development lifecycle or the principles or some of the core syntax that you can use. But if you know Python, that goes a long way. Many people are now have moved from Python on to do Golang, but I think Terraform and Python, if you know these two things well, you're good to go. Next question, how important are the soft skills to work in DevOps, and which And which ones you think is important to add value to your team? Okay, I think you have to be a person who has to be open to ideas. All right, you cannot be a person thinking that, okay, this is the structured rigid format that has to follow. I think that would not be a case, because a different organization you think, you go, you see that DevOps is slightly seen different way. Your application development, the whole digital team probably acts slightly differently. You have to understand their mindset. You have to be ready to be flexible. But there are certain things you don't want people to do cowboy coding. You don't want to see people see the best practices. But not many places do best or follow all the best practices. So you have to see that quick wins iteratively. So that are the one of the things. You have to be open. All right, you have to be available. Next question, how do you approach a new workflow pipeline? What is the most critical thing to take into account? How do you approach a new workflow pipeline? Um, Workflow pipeline, that means you want to say that how someone can, you or some application developer can quickly do a continuous integration into, you make a small change, how it happens on whether it is on his laptop or other onto his onto his deployment, how quickly and easily he can deploy, so he can get a feedback. So basically feedback loop. I did a small change, I deployed, does it cause any problems? Has it broken anything? So you have to have separate environments where you can do your deployment. And then you go through your pull request, merge, deployment workflow, and that you can see each stage of the way how you bring the change from development all the way to the production in multiple different environments. So this is something you have to work with the development team. Most cases they know, sometimes you have to actually coach them or work with them. Sometimes you also learn from them. Yeah. What is the most stressful situation you be as a DevOps engineer? That is miscommunication between clients' requirements and development team. There could be miscommunications. There could be sometimes. I think it varies from team to team. In most cases, I've seen that things that collaborate a lot, things that they create some working groups. They sometimes go out and just do retrospective, the things that they have done well, not done well, things that could have been done better. So that's how you progressively learn, because you probably think that you have done a good job, but your client side, they felt that some other things should have happened differently. So it should not come very late. The quicker feedback you get is better, no matter how tough the problem is. What is the difference between DevOps and cloud engineering? I think DevOps is kind of like a cultural mindset, working practice is more of a soft skill side of thing, and cloud computing is more of a how you actually, because everything is pretty much in cloud, how cloud behaves. Because in order to build your application, you have to think about how it fits to my cloud platform, because you have to think of being cloud native. So cloud engineering is more of an engineering or infrastructure coding side of this. DevOps is more of a soft skill, or how you understand the procedure to take application from left side of development all the way to production. Okay. Is the salary good? Not bad. Not bad, but you want to say that you want to progress more, how you want to progress. I think you become DevOps, you become senior DevOps. There is no, sometimes some places they have got principal DevOps, but you have to branch out. If you want to keep progressing, you have to be something different. You probably have to go slightly different, not in industry, slightly different kind of role if you want to keep moving up. Do you use your core Linux skills in a day-to-day? Like say you do, Is there still a need for learning core Linux sysadmin skill? It always helps, is always needed. You cannot do without that. Right now, this morning, I was doing that. However, sometimes you feel that even you do cloud computing, you do not always need to do core Linux skills that often, because a lot of things that you get the visibility from your monitoring tools. So you get that things in a different way, but it is sometimes you need to go to the nuts and bolts time to time. Can someone new to software development go to DevOps role, or do they need to start the junior level? I think that if you are starting as a software development, do your software development for a while. Understand your continuous integration and deployment side as a software development side. Then you can think of doing a kind of like a serverless deployment. If you do some kind of a Lambda deployment, then it will just open a more of a platform side to you. You cannot jump onto cloud computing straight. I don't think so. Yeah, those are the questions. Is there a move towards no-code, low-code DevOps? I have not seen that. I think it is. There are tools that coming kind of like AWS has opened their own CDI. Also, there are the tools like a Pulumi that has come, which you can do infrastructure coding using Python or Golang. Then if you hone those skills, you can be not just a platform developer, you can also be a software developer. I have not come across much onto that thing. There is a talk at some point, more stuff go into as less code as possible. Certainly, I have seen for the Kubernetes side of thing, but that is always a changing. There's things we are not gonna do the same thing we're doing today in a few years' time. Yeah. Windows Server PowerShell. If I want to shift career, what is the first steps? Okay. If you have done PowerShell, these sort of things, get to learn about Linux side of thing, because the way cloud computing has actually evolved is more of a Linux side of thing. Of course, you can do Windows work on cloud as well. You have to understand the cloud concept, what is cloud computing is. You have to work with the software development side of thing, how they do their deployment. So if you can combine these two, maybe. No, not maybe, should be. Yeah. How many cloud service providers are you familiar with? Mostly I use AWS, but I have done some work in Google's GCP. I've not done any work on Azure as well. It just depends on what exposure you get. Yeah. Do you think that it is relatively easy to use one when you are very familiar with that? Yes, I think so. The concept is pretty much the same. To be honest, sometimes it feels like this. They have copied or reverse engineered idea from each other. I have seen Ali Cloud from Ali, what is it called? Alibaba. It seemed to me it's very much of like a reverse engineered. Or is it important to become familiar with the several? You know what? Just stick to one. Sometimes hire. Oh, you have not worked in the GCP, so I cannot hire you. I mean, tough that. I mean, how many things you can learn? So many in one span time. It is humanly possible. You learn what you are exposed to. There are some things in cloud computing you cannot learn just by reading or practicing. You have to be on the job. So if whatever the opportunity you get, just learn that well, and try to learn the principle and try to learn the back of it, why it is done certain way, so you can use that principle in any other platforms, cloud platforms you use. Or is it important to become familiar with the server? Yeah, okay, I think I have answered the question. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.